Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. My name is Link, and today I'm joined by Gamma, a game developer that has contributed to numerous game jams and made games such as Cataclysm, a bullet hell game about a cat on a paper airplane, Cable Rush, a tower defense game with a unique power system twist, as well as many other game jams and projects. Hi, Gamma, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Well, I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. So, Gamba, before we get started, just in case for those that aren't aware of who you are, do you mind telling me a little about yourself, how you got into gaming, or developing and all of that?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm Gamma. I'm typically a programmer or kind of dual purpose with game design, and yeah, I've done primarily game jams at the moment, and currently working on a main project. But yeah, I've been doing game jams since February, and slowly building up some stuff to put in a portfolio, and yeah.
That's great to hear. And like as something I talk to a lot of people about, uh, one of the important things that there seems to be consistent that they share is being able to start and finish a project. And I think that's really great because looking through your catalog, especially if you've been doing this since February, you have looks like seven or so public projects that have completed or have been put out there. So that's really great, and hopefully you're learning a lot and getting to prototype and have fun doing that.
Yeah, like um yeah, first one is in February, and I've been generally doing one like about a month or two in between them. So yeah, it's actually a lot of fun. I was terrified to do the first one and was very anxious about like the idea of having so little time to do something, because I'm definitely part of the majority who typically will start a project and you either get distracted by something shiny and you start trying to do a new project, or it just kind of drops altogether due to either frustration or lack of interest anymore. So yeah, I think they're a very good fit for me for just having that uh, time limit to really make you focus and go through all the steps.
Yeah, definitely. And it's I can definitely relate to being someone that starts a project and then just doesn't finish it, or uh, the first real wrench of it becomes a huge discouraging moment or what have you. So uh, I don't mean this to sound pretentious or patronizing, but great job being able to work past that, especially if it's anything similar to me, and in the sense of relatability. Very congratulations on getting past that. I personally never have been able to, so just yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, thank you. It's I definitely uh, struggled for the longest time, yeah, to like I said, being very anxious to do the first one, but once I actually managed to like finish that first one, I think you gain a lot of like knowledge and confidence to be able to just really start getting into them more, and being able to explore more with them.
Yeah, and that's great to hear. And from my end, I'm not incredibly well versed in game jams, and like the whole. I don't want to say the indie scene because there's at this point in time there's seems to be many different layers of the indie scene, but the itch.io or the game jam side of the indie scene. So can you maybe tell me a little bit more about that in general, like how what got you into wanting to do game jams and all of that?
Yeah, so I guess one of the big things that finally convinced me to do it, because I wasn't really aware of the existence of game jams for the longest time. Like I've technically been programming for, I don't know, like 10, 10 something years, but I started off with like GameMaker 7 way back when and started learning some GML and such. So I've been kind of doing that for a while, but I wasn't really familiar with the idea of game jams until I started Unity about a year ago, and I came across a channel called Mrs. or however many times that is, and um, he had some videos where he's going with like three other developers or so, and they're doing some kind of restriction. Usually, I think it's like using the same asset pack to develop a game. So you have like, say, a sprite sheet from Kenny or something like that, and so they all basically get to have 48 hours to just make whatever you can with that. You can like mess with the assets and modify them to be able to make things, or um, yeah, anything like that, and use music or sounds and whatnot to really just bring these things together. And I thought that was like a really cool concept, but I was always very skeptical about whether I would actually be able to do that. But yeah, that was once I kind of started watching some more of those, I eventually started going like, I think that I would be able to do something like this. So it took maybe a little more time to actually build up the courage to really enter a jam, because I think by the first one I had only been doing it for like 6 months in Unity, but that was kind of the point where I felt more or less confident enough to try and attempt my first one.
That's really neat that you got started from, from a point of trying to play with it and learn from it, and then watching other people do those like self-constrained challenges with each other. That I just think that's really neat because I know a lot of people, they watch that and it might not inspire them, but it's just one of those things where it's a point of interest to see what people do or how different problems are solved. I think that's the wrong way to put it, but how people express their creativity differently when given the same like components, right? That's what I was going for. So it's really interesting that that was what led you to stepping your foot in the water as well. Now, when you say that's kind of what got you to take those steps, did you follow along and try and like create, use their constraints as well, or was that a little too for me that would be daunting. So I'm just wondering, it was would did you find the idea of that a little daunting? You just sort of uh, that was the doorway in, or did you kind of go right in and try and um, do some of the same hurdles or constraints as they would have?
I kind of use some of the same restraints because I'm not an artist whatsoever. I am just pretty untalented when it comes to that aspect. So I did kind of take inspiration and used a spreadsheet for my first one, and it was like a pretty versatile one from Kenny. I think it's like a 1-bit RPG pack or something like that. So you have just tons of different stuff from different characters, some random items, some um, pathways and stuff like that. So when I downloaded that, I figured it's like I would set this as what I'm going to be using for my visuals. And there was also I pretty sure is the mini jam that I joined, which is a bi-weekly one that happens, and they usually have like a theme that they'll do with it. And I think that one was like power, and then a constraint. And the constraint on this one was 5 colors. So that was another layer of things to consider. And yeah, so I think, yeah, like what you were saying, these things can really bring out some interesting ways that people handle their assets and just use them in tons of different ways, because you can Kenny's a very well-known asset maker, so you can see his stuff just everywhere, and people make just really interesting, different stuff all the time.
And that's great to hear. And like I said, I do my best to try and follow game jams, but it's just I'm always so inundated with so many other things. I really am not able to, as as much as I am not happy saying that, just because some of the things that you see in these game jams are really great. And like you see some projects leading to different games that have like huge amounts of uh, backing or huge amounts of people coming like to enjoy them and them getting more mainstream. For example, like Celeste or Loop Hero. And I wanted to say this much because I don't know. I personally don't know if I've seen this before, but with the little tower defense game you did with Cable Rush, I thought that was a really unique idea. Having to manage the power by running the cables to the towers. I just want to share that I thought that was a really cool idea, that I haven't seen that before. And hopefully that if you like, as you continue on, or what have you, hopefully some of those things that have worked real well or are unique, that you find ways to get to reuse them, and that uh, hopefully that you get recognized for some of those things. Because like I said, like I loved the idea of just running power. For example, inside of Cataclysm, I also really loved the idea of you being in charge of your upgrades, quote unquote upgrades, and that you could kind of spend and use them as you need, or as you saw fit, or as they charged up. Instead of it just being like a charged shot, you could spend a point to heal a little, spend a point to get a shield, spend a few points to get a different weapon for a time. And I just wanted to share that I for both of those things, when I played them, I loved both of those unique twists because I've never seen them before. And hopefully you continue to have ideas that give you those unique twists, and you can find some, I don't want to say success, because again that sounds, um, I feel that trying to like create a metric like that, or saying it's a success in a blanket term, is a little, um, uh, not the right way to go about it. But I just mean that hopefully, you get some recognition, or that it proves in the future for you, like it's something that helps. I'm struggling very much to try and say this, so I apologize, and I really hope that at no
Okay.
point did I say anything that unintentionally comes off as pretentious or arrogant or offensive or what have you.
No, no, you're good. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the praise on that. I definitely can't try to say that like these ideas are wholly my own, because I know Cataclysm and Cable Rush were both times where I worked uh, with a small team, and generally when we all collaborate like that, one of the first things uh, that we'll do is go into a big call, and we'll just kind of start discussing what we might want to do, start making like some little design documents about, you know, somebody wants to make, um, just some idea, somebody wants to make another idea. And then once we're done that, we just start putting things together and either picking whatever one we like most, or just taking some of the best elements from several of them together. So, yeah, both of them have definitely been big collaborative efforts in terms of the mechanics. But yeah,
So, Gamma, I do want to step back just a little. And by just a little, I probably a little more than just a little. And go back to your childhood. So, what was your favorite game as a child? And what about that game is what made it your favorite?
that's a good question, because I would be pretty hard pressed to like really bring it down to like just one game. I I played like a pretty big, well, I even do today's play a pretty big variety of different games, but I think probably one of my big ones as a kid would be this game called Gotcha Force that came out on the GameCube. It didn't actually sell very well, so it didn't have a lot of popularity. There weren't a ton of copies made of it. So I felt very blessed to have seen it at Blockbuster, whatever have you, and being able to rent it and eventually like buy the game. But I really enjoyed that game for like various reasons. I like a lot of games that will get a lot of mileage out of their mechanics, not just, you know, one you make this one mechanic, you spend all this time and it ends up getting like used twice or something like that, or it gets completely dwarfed by just various other things that you put in later. But I really enjoyed how they would have, I don't even know how many different words you could have, probably several hundred, I think. And even though there's definitely some similarities between a lot of them, there were just so many of them that have very unique mechanics to them. They have different traits. They have the like special abilities, and you can tell that there was just a lot of love put into that game and making bringing the most out of this relatively simple idea of you just build a small team of these little Borgs and just go and fight other ones. And it, yeah, I think it was really fun. I think that's inspired me a lot for trying to make my trying to make some mechanics that you get a lot of mileage out of. It's not going to be, you know, very. I try to make them significant in a sense to make sure that they hold up and it's not just a bunch of wasted effort for a player tries it a couple times and they go, this this kind of sucks. I'm gonna go with this other option or whatever have you.
Yeah, definitely. And I can relate to that, and having games that, if there's this kind of a sweet spot sometimes, I think, where if you have, too little to offer, it gets boring very fast, and if you have, way too much, you kind of can get lost in it. And by that I mean, way too much to offer. I mean, games like Skyrim or Fallout, which I perfectly, or Fallout 3, 4, etc. I perfectly enjoy those games. It's just a matter of, if there's so much stuff, sometimes there's not a lot of direction. And I definitely like the idea of games when they give you, just enough to um, keep things so like fresh, or things that you can continue to do things, and be unique, and not, not get tired or be boring or what have you too quick at least.
Yeah, definitely. Like I totally agree. There's definitely a sweet spot between where you have just a bloated amount of content and you can, Borderlands can say you have, billions of guns and everything, but a lot of them, will essentially boil down to a lot of the same stuff. But I really enjoy when you have just these certain guns that will have a unique mechanic or be able to just some special ability. I would rather have a ton of those than just a million just standard weapons that will do all the same thing.
Yes, exactly. Having Borderlands, for example, like you said, having two different machine guns, but one does like two more damage or what have you. You know, technically, that's a new gun, right? But at the same time, having a little bit of focus and kind of whittling it down a little is never a bad thing. Um, it can turn in those cases, it can turn like the looter shooter mechanic or what have you, from just grinding for the gun that does five more damage to grinding for the gun that does something a little different, or something that's a little more specific for, what you're looking to do, or what you're looking to have fun with, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have recently been playing a game with a friend called Gunfire Reborn that actually pulls this off, I think, pretty well. Like it's similar to the idea of like a looter shooter where you can find these different guns and such after you do some challenges, defeat some enemies, but there's way less of them. You I think there's actually not going to really throw a number out there because I'm not very sure, but there's significantly less, and they don't have like all these tiny micro stats that are being changed all the time. It's mostly just a little bit of damage, and maybe they'll have some special abilities and such. So I think that's a game that has started doing that really well. I don't think fully released, but I think they're definitely on the right track with that kind of idea.
And that's definitely great to hear. And I am kind of familiar with that game. I did not know it was so much of a looter shooter. I knew more of it on the roguelike or roguelite aspect of it. So that's really interesting to introduce um, that kind of co-op mechanic, to like introduce all of those together, because that it sounds like, from the gun aspect at least, that it's always going to stay fresh and interesting. And then from what I know about it, the rogue like side of it is also going to make it so you have an idea of what kind of gun is going to do what, but you might always have an opportunity, or not have that opportunity, but you might be introduced to different things where you get to experience different builds where the meta can change, and you know keep it fresh even longer, because it's you're not always going, and you're not always going to be playing it the same way with your friend, and they're not always going to be playing it the same way, and you're going to experience it differently, right?
Yeah, I mean, like my my friend and I definitely go full min max Chad gamers on it sometimes, and we're just trying to make the most out of whatever the best guns are. I think if you're not trying to go that hard, you can find a lot of viability in all sorts of different weapons, and there's a lot of I think pretty much each of them has a small unique thing to them that works really well. And I guess when I said earlier that it's kind of a loot and shoot sort of game, I would say it's, as you're saying, it's definitely more of like the roguelike aspects, but there's just some light aspects of being able to loot enemies and get these different items.
Definitely, definitely. That kind of reminds me of I can't remember the name of the game for the life of me right now, which is horrible because I really enjoyed it. But it was a similar aspect where it was there was melee and there was some looter random drop kind of things, and it was ran gen for everything, and just the complete nonsensical viability that even trying to min max that you can introduce when playing with friends. For example, in when we played the game that for the life of me I'm not remembering right now, and I hate myself for it. Um, it was mostly him min maxing and me finding ways to mitigate the class I was playing's kind of random nature to things. Um, and in this case, it was me trying to identify potions that would be useful to us and get rid of potions that wouldn't. But then when I died to the final boss, I lied to him about the usefulness of potions when he was out of all his own resources. And um, well, to say the least, he lost even more skills and was even less viable for the final boss. And I like the idea of games where it's you can be reliant on that. And it sounds like Gunfire Reborn might kind of scratch that same itch, which is great to hear.
Yeah. I'm I think I know what game you're talking about. Is it called Cave Blazers?
It might be Cave Blazers.
Yeah.
I was thinking that, but the problem for me was there was oh no, it was not Cave Blazers. This one was another 3D game. But Cave Blazers, I have played that, and that one is another game that I have thoroughly enjoyed just by the and feel free to agree or disagree, but the simplistic nature of it, so to say, but the fact that it is very fun to try and um, perfect, I guess you would say, as well as like the sometimes uh, straight up frenetic might be the wrong word, but the straight up frenetic gameplay of it and trying to juggle everything. Um, so that is as a wonderful game as well. And I don't, hopefully that is something that is relatable to you as well for it.
I I like the game and I secretly hate it just because I haven't fully finished it. And so there's slight resentment to that because I have some gripes with the last area, but that's neither here nor there. Overall I would say I generally enjoy it. Yeah.
So it's funny that you say that because that is definitely the same feeling I have for the game. Um, it is a game that I can very easily be hot and cold with. And when I was playing it, I would be constantly annoyed by certain things from it, and then I would die and immediately restart it. So yeah, I can definitely relate to the loving it and then also secretly just hating it so much as well.
Yeah. I I have a few games. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but definitely some of those where I have such a love-hate relationship with them. It's generally not that like they're bad games. It's more of just I'm generally a tryhard that's trying to like go for the big challenges.
And yes, especially when it comes to roguelikes, right? I think the as you put it, like the try hard in quotes. Um I think that comes more down to, for me at least, the fact that I'm more frustrated that or most of the time I'm more frustrated that I took a big risk hoping it would pay off, and that either it didn't pay off in the it wasn't worth the risk, or I died and the risk was too great of my what I could handle. And I think in the case of Cave Blazers, that's that was what did it for me. Is that I would be annoyed with myself for thinking I could do what I was about to do and then failing miserably.
Yeah, definitely. I'm certainly no stranger to that feeling.
For the record, by the way, the game I was thinking of is actually called Barony. Um, if you've never played it, it might be something that would be worth looking into. I don't want to say it sounds similar to Gunfire Reborn. However, if if you like the kind of gentle looter shooter or somewhat random dropped mechanics of things, and then the roguelike elements, it might be something that you could enjoy um, with a friend in co-op.
Yeah, I actually just quickly looked at Steam here, and yeah, I played it for 20 minutes, so I think it's one of those ones where I tried it, forgot about coming back to it, and it just kind of sat in the backlog. But yeah, I might have to take another look at that sometime soon.
That's definitely fair, and I would just recommend though, um, to try it with a friend. It's for me, it was much more enjoyable playing co-op. Playing it single player, it just did not rub me the right way. I couldn't handle it. With more than one player, it became something that was much more manageable in my end. So I'll say that much. It might not be the case for you, but worth throwing out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Gamma, what is it? You kind of touched on this before, but what is it that makes games enjoyable for you? Like, what is what are some of the core things that if you play a game or you see a game and, the things about it that right away, you're like, this is the game for me?
Um, I think the big things that I enjoy are primarily like the depth of the mechanics. I'm not much of a story person personally, so a lot of the games, or if I'm playing like an RPG or JRPG, something like that, I'm kind of that person that's just mashing through. And if somebody asks me like, "Oh, how's this story?" I'm like, "I don't know. Play it and find out." um, I really enjoy and appreciate like when a game has complex mechanics that have you know a high skill ceiling to them. Like some games like Monster Hunter, the series I really enjoy because you can generally get into it with the mechanics, especially some of the newer ones. But there's so many layers to the game that are implicitly and explicitly told to you to be able to get better and slowly improve that. Or some games like Factorio, I think, are fantastic games that are just rich with tons of features, different things, different ways to go about these problems, and give you just tons of pieces to put together and solve them yourself in your own unique way.
And definitely, yeah, I can share the same kind of appreciation just because a little different, but for me personally, I like the when games have a lot of customization to it that allows you to just sort of go at it however you want. Um Factorial, for example, I haven't played much of. However, the idea of being able to do something really optimized or unoptimized, but still achieve it, or do some really wild layouts or setups, that really appeals to me. Just because, like you said, it can be it can be really satisfying to have the mechanics that are just that deep and still afford you the freedom to more or less just do whatever you want and see what works, but still have very high levels of, I'm going to say polish, that's the wrong word, but still have high levels of polish to for yourself that you can still do things really precise and still really crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I think the community also helps a lot too, because I would say there's kind of an overlap of the attitude of the Factorio community for the most part, and even game development, where a lot of the time, if somebody's asking for like they're new to the game, but they want to know like what's the most perfect way to be able to make this or that, and I've seen a lot of times where people just say, just do your best on your own, try to make and achieve whatever you're trying to do, and just as you continue, you can iterate on it, you can figure out more ways as you learn more and even make it better. So I really like that kind of attitude, that vibe where it's, you can still collaborate with people and try to figure out new things, but people encourage you to grow with the game.
And I didn't want to make the connection to programming there, or development, sorry. However, that is a great connection to be made, because you're right. You can always talk to people, or in collaborations you can bounce off of people trying to figure out how to do something. But at the end of the day, you having that self discovery, and you having that chance to discover even better ways to do it is always fantastic, as not only a learning device, but as like a point of satisfaction, because you can then you feel proud of yourself, you feel satisfied about what you did, and then when you iterate on it in a different way, you're going to feel even better about yourself. And like I said, I like the parallel, because there's lots of ways to do something sometimes, and well, sometimes there's, quote unquote, the best answer, but not always is that best answer going to be applicable, or something that's implementable, or what have you. And it's great to hear that the community for Factoria was also there in such a way that it's not just saying, oh, well, you're going to want to do layout like in this kind of 3 by 3 grid, doing X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z, but are encouraging people, especially new players, to just sort of wing it and go, well, you got to dig up iron ore and then process the iron ore, and then you get iron ingots, and then you can do what have you. It's one thing to say it that way, but it's another way to say it. It's one way to just sort of say like the process that you need to follow, but it's another way to try, or it's another thing to try and tell people how they need to do it. If that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I definitely agree that it's it's so much more fulfilling to be able to do these kind of things. Like I said, the parallel between uh, that kind of fostering creativity and learning how to do these things, even in game development, is a really good thing. I think a lot of people should try to avoid just copy pasting a tutorial of whether it's building some kind of thing in a factory or whether it's how to make a game, and rather try to just go along with them and take these things in and learn, but still give it your own twist. Like you're not obligated by any means to follow these instructions to a T. You can still, maybe you don't like this certain way they do that for one reason or another. Like play around, find find out new things.
Definitely, and for me especially, uh, being stuck on a problem, while incredibly frustrating and annoying and what have you, uh, once you resolve it, that feeling of satisfaction. I said that before as well, but that dopamine hit that comes from it is even better. And it's great when I personally think it's great when games are able to create situations where you can receive that same dopamine hit, that like it's fulfilling in not it's fulfilling in a very different way when you're part of the solution, instead of just doing the thing that it's expected, like. And I think the best way to explain what I just vaguely um, gestured at, is like with Mario, for example. You know what your goal is. From go from one side of the map to the other, get the flag, hit the box, what have you. And well, a challenging level can be incredibly satisfying to beat. Having a game throw you into it where you have to kind of create your own way around it to get to that other side of the level, and the way that you do it and the way that I do it can be incredibly different. But the fact that you're kind of putting yourself into it to figure that out, that's the kind of thing I really love in games, because it for me it always creates that, like, an entirely different kind of satisfaction. It creates a very different kind of happiness and joy from it, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And I realize that is incredibly vague in a sense.
No, I think you definitely bring a good point. That kind of is what I was kind of talking about with uh, how I really appreciate like deep mechanics where yeah, you're not necessarily going to be just stuck on a fixed method of being able to solve problems. You're more given tools to be able to fix these problems rather than just specific solutions to problems and such. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So Gamma and we've also touched on this. Um, so it's I apologize if this is kind of a repeat kind of question, but what is it like? What kind of games are you enjoying now, and what is it about those games that are enjoyable? And I know you mentioned Monster Hunter as well as Factorio, but are there any others that might be a little different or in that same vein that you're also enjoying?
Lately I've been on like a severe roguelike kick. I've I've been playing, like I said, that Gunfire Reborn is a big roguelike. Um, one of my one of my current project teammates, Thomas, he got me into Slay the Spire recently because quote unquote research or the game that we're working on right now involves we're kind of taking inspiration from some games like that and their card mechanics. So been really into that. And then yeah, I think primarily roguelikes is what I've been playing. I've been kind of dipping back into Binding of Isaac, uh, another one called Dungreed, and stuff like that. Yeah, I think roguelikes are probably one of my biggest genres that I've been playing right now. They've definitely grown on me over the years.
And it's as someone that also enjoys roguelikes and in a way also had them grow on me. Um, I hopefully this is something you can relate to, but I've absolutely loved the boom that they've had in the last few years. Uh, in the sense that, before you'd have a roguelike and there wouldn't be that many, or, they'd be just not something that would be as viable, quote unquote. And I say that with that in that way with a little bit of disdain, because I don't want to say it like that. But you'd see them just being worked on less. But now, with the success they've had in the indie scene, you're seeing them even more in the mainstream scene. And I'm incredibly excited for the future of them all, because I I love the idea of deep mechanics and sometimes not deep mechanics, whatever works. But I love the idea of them where it's something that you can get into, get really good at, and a run can last 6 minutes or it can last like an hour, but at the same time, you're still enjoying yourself, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you definitely have moments where you are playing an amazing run only to either get cheesed or just choke a run and fall into a crippling depression. But I mean, contrast that with when you get a like stupidly good run and you just get a major dopamine hit and you're just burning through the game. And yeah, I think there's also just that tipping point with a lot of roguelikes where, I think a lot of people when they first start trying them, they're just frankly going to suck at them. I think everybody definitely struggles with their first few experiences with roguelikes, but eventually you reach that eureka points where you realize like finally got the rhythm of things and the game just becomes exponentially more enjoyable. And yeah, I definitely think the boom of roguelikes has been really good. I think they're very tricky to get right, I guess in a sense. Like I guess it depends also just what your standards are for what you consider to be like a really good roguelike versus an okay one. But yeah, I think it's really good to see forward more.
Definitely, definitely, and like I said, I agree, with everything you said there, and I'm excited for the future of them, and it sounds like you might be as well, which is it's great because I love them, and like you said, it's once you get the first ebb and flow of one, the next one's much easier to get into, and then the next one even more so and more so, and after you've played 5, 10, or what have you, it's almost second nature, the idea of what you're trying to do, and you don't get smacked as hard, but you still get smacked pretty hard sometimes.
We're addicted to pain, Link.
Uh, for roguelikes, definitely yes. I'm always down to think I'm doing really well and then just make one wrong move and realize I was wonderfully out of my element and then never be able to recreate that moment.
We can tell ourselves that I'm never going to touch this game again because I got cheesed so hard, but we all know the next day you're going to be trying to avenge yourself from that defeat. So yeah,
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. And then you tell yourself I'll uninstall it, but it's a small game and you can install again in 20 minutes. And yes, it is an endless loop of wondering why you're hurting yourself until you find the next thing to maybe take its place.
yeah, definitely.
So, Gamma, I don't want to take too much more of your time. However, before we got started, there was a part of the whole game jam scene that you had mentioned wanting to talk about. So, I want to give you give you some time to maybe dive into that so that we can spend some time there.
Yeah, for sure. I think I think game jams are definitely something more people should participate in, especially if you're interested in getting into game development, but maybe you don't know where to start. Like a lot of the time, you see the answer of how do I get into game development being like just do it, which it's not wrong, but it's also not super helpful. But I think doing something like a game jam, and you see a lot of game jams, there's people who are very new to this sort of thing, and I definitely can appreciate the efforts a lot of the time put in where they may not have shiny assets or the ideas may be a little rough around the edges, but the point is that they tried, they managed to get it to however or whatever state and submit it. So I think it's a really good way to practice like understanding what kind of scope is realistic, and it's also in that sense really good at tempering your expectations of what you think you can do. Like if you're going to be trying to get into game development, just don't don't think too much about that MMO idea you have in your head because it's probably not going to happen as your first game. So you definitely want to test the waters, play around with stuff, and yeah, I think especially as I guess this small shout out to the mini jam series in particular. They're a uh, really good one to participate in. They're pretty lax. You can, if you find a really big bug or something after that, you can always patch it up. And the the themes are usually really great, and the constraints are usually pretty reasonable. But I think they really bring out some creativity and force you to kind of think outside the box and try something new.
And definitely, and thank you for sharing that. And that kind of leads to another question or two I've always kind of wondered. Um, when it comes to game jams and the constraints, because I know that typically game jams aren't just, hey, make a game in 30 days or 24 hours or what have you. Usually there's different things. I remember 10 plus years ago now, one of the ones that amazed me the most was it was set up on a size limit, and it was, it had to be under like 12 kilobytes or something, and someone made a fully functional um, like first person shooter engine, um, and a couple levels in it, and it sound effects and all that. And so the constraints always have blown my mind, and I'm wondering, are there any constraints that when you and like the people you collaborate with, or you alone, or what have you, when you're looking at a jam, are there any constraints where you just look at them and say, no, 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 we don't want any part of this?
Uh, there was definitely one jam. I can't remember what it was. I think the jam had like a limitation of you could only use like these just bonkers layout of keys. Like it was just awful. And I think you had like six keys to work with. They were just spread out in the most terrible way possible. And I mean, it was intentional, obviously, but I was initially going to enter, and after I saw that, I was just like, I that just seems a little too annoying for my taste. So I ended up dipping out of that one. But yeah, generally, I don't think there's that many jams that have like terrible limitations by any means. I guess everyone's threshold of what becomes a little too much to deal with varies from person to person. But I would say I'm usually pretty open to whatever they kind of bring. Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. And, I have this question as well. And it's a similar, very similar question to that. Are there any constraints that you've seen or been presented with, or what have you, that you absolutely loved the idea of them? And, this made you really excited to try and navigate them or play around with them or what have you?
Yeah, I would say so. Like the first one that I did with that mini jam one, like the five colors thing, is it sounds like it's really not going to be like that big of a deal, but I learned I definitely got a good sense of practice of prioritizing for the UX experience where all of the sprites I had were just in black and white, but I wanted to go more of like a grayscale sort of thing. So I decided to do you have black as just your very base background color and essentially four other shades to go with it. So learned a lot about you want to be emphasizing the most important things going on around you. Like you don't particularly care that much about these little patches of grass or whatever. So there's going to be like second second darkest shade and stuff like that. But you want to really focus on communicating the most important things in the most explicit way possible. So I actually really enjoyed that more than I thought I would, and I think that's a really good one that can bring some unique challenges because it doesn't sound that bad in the beginning, but once you actually have to put that in practice, it can definitely cause some issues if you're not very careful with it.
Definitely, and as someone that has a design background, as well as a programming background, um, the trying to put focus on the right things while differentiating other things is a very difficult thing to do, in that you're trying to communicate, but you still want to have that flavor of everything, right? And when you're only working with five colors, or in your case, I'm assuming it was necromancy overload.
Yeah, that was the one.
uh when in that case, because I did try that one, I thought that it was an interesting little game. I had fun with it, but trying to communicate with like such a limited palette, the important things is can be very difficult. And I can definitely respect and appreciate the thought that goes into what is considered important and what is considered just a little bit of flavor, like you said, the grass, because you could just have a lot of black, and visually a lot of black is not that interesting, to be honest. But being able to have work within the constraints and add little patches of different gray there to keep it sort of, to give a sense of perspective for movement, or to give, just a little bit of that flavor, is a really great challenge to solve. And, hearing that you enjoyed that challenge, and that, it was a fun thing to do, is really great. Because, like I said, from my background, I always respect, no matter what, regardless of my background, I should say, I always respect the art side of things and the challenge to figuring out some of those art um, constraints.
Yeah,
Constraints is in quotes.
I've been kind of running into that issue lately too with current project because it's we're intending for it to be able to be played with 4 people in local split screen, and uh, one of my project partners, Thomas, and I have been playing through Parsec, and it's just the 2 of us. But generally, the architecture for the game is you know scalable, that there shouldn't really be much issue if we've been doing 4. But recently we decided to, or I was testing something, and I turned on another controller, and then it was kind of a sudden oh crap moment, because we realized that our UI has been starting to get a little bloated, and with 2 players it's fine, but once you had that horizontal divider between things, you kind of realize how little real estate you have on the screen, and how we had to start reprioritizing, like I said, what is important? Do we need like this bar about where or what active effects you have on, or can we take a more diegetic approach to doing this? Like, do you need an icon to show that you're poisoned, or can we use a more like universally recognizable symbol, like some green bubbles are appearing out of you, and they'll stay with you for the duration of the effect. We It really helps also refine our principles for how we're designing our things, trying to make sure that we, instead of this big box that we previously had to display the name of the card, the effects, or the description and whatnot, so now we're aiming to try and make things clearer and require less UI, less explicit stuff, and being able to make it more easily learnable and recognizable without all these annoying explicit text, or walls of text, or other intrusive UI things that can just make it all feel a little suffocating or cluttered.
And definitely, I don't envy you in the slightest for having to now navigate or figure that out. I know how much of a challenge that can be, and I sincerely wish you guys the best of luck in trying to figure out what works best in terms of like the mechanics of it as well, but as well as what works best for your own sensibilities and standards, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Like I said about the roguelike, I am addicted to pain, so I'm still chipping away at this issue, and we're slowly making progress. But yeah, once this issue revealed itself to us, it was not exactly a welcome problem to have all of our work suddenly kind of upturned, and we realized that we have quite a bit of work to do in trying to refine this and make it make it work for various levels of split screen, and also just in general. I think it's a good lesson that I'll be trying to apply in the future for even other projects.
And definitely, and kind of like for the graphic side of things, uh it's very similar, in the lessons you'll learn are also going to be just as valuable and applicable as programming. um and I realize I say that in a really borderline condescending way, and I apologize for that. But it's I definitely, it's something that it's experience is always good, I think is the best way to say that without sounding somewhat know-it-all-y. Um, but yeah, so hopefully that is something you can take forward in some way, shape, or form for the future and future projects.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've only been really doing like Unity and game dev seriously for let's see, like next week will be 1 year of doing that. So I'm definitely like learning all the time. So yeah, it's good to at least have these growing pains, we'll call them, of getting these lessons brought forth and being able to keep the experience for them useful in the future.
Definitely, and like I said, hopefully those growing pains lead to just a better. I'm struggling to say it the right way, but hopefully the growing pains that you have to go through are things that are just going to make it better, easier, what have you for you in the future.
Yeah, definitely. It's a constant learning process. That's definitely something people may not realize is you're never truly done learning or solving new issues.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Same as programming, same as everything, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's been quite a ride trying to constantly, at first just gain the knowledge to be able to do the most basic things, but then once you have that baseline knowledge, being able to be forced to try and use that knowledge in new ways and solve new issues that you may not necessarily be able to have a tutorial or some kind of video for it to try and tell you exactly what to do, but you just kind of have to slowly learn the basics and learn how to use them as tools of knowledge more than anything.
And definitely, thank you because that is great and very applicable advice for a lot of things, but especially for game design and such. Now, Gamma, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. However, if there was anything else you want to discuss, cool game, what you're doing, something you feel more people should be aware of, by all means, please let us know.
Uh, yeah, I guess like I was saying before, definitely if you're interested in doing game development, like YouTube is a really solid source of information. That's essentially how I learn pretty much 90% of what I know is going through and finding good channels that give you a lot of information, teach you just the foundations of programming and how to keep learning how to do new things. And yeah, I would say like if you're looking into engines and contemplating like what you or how to do these things, yeah, just look it up. Look on YouTube for you know Godot tutorials, Unity tutorials, and you'll generally find a lot of really good resources. And once you feel at a level where you think you want to try and do something like game jam, I would say it's almost always worth doing, even if you know you may not necessarily be able to complete the game jam for one reason or another. But once you do get to that point where you can manage to submit something within that time constraint and really just put your all into it, then I think that's a huge boost of confidence that a lot of people really need because it's very easy to get discouraged when you're doing something like programming or game design where it may feel like you're never really getting anywhere with it. But once you have that opportunity to really put your knowledge in and just make something that you're proud of out of it, it can be very good incentive to keep going and slowly get addicted to game jams.
And yeah, no, thank you so much for that advice, that those words of encouragement, because I think it's always great to hear and always valid. So thank you so much for sharing that. As well, would you please let everyone know where they can find more information about you? I'll also be including this in the episode description, of course, but this way people know.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much, I guess the place I'm usually most active is on Twitter. So you just look me up as GammaFoxTBG. I'm on there a lot. I'm trying to be a little more active and been slowly sharing some of the stuff I'm working on as well. Itch is also kind of where I'm participating in pretty much all of my jams. So that's kind of where you can find the stuff I've been working on and such. So yeah, hopefully I'll eventually manage to get some ground on even possibly doing my own little YouTube series at some point, trying to further help like get people some of those first steps forward to being able to do these things as well. So
And definitely, like I said, I'll include those that information in the description, and hopefully you are able to get to that point, where you feel comfortable sharing and hopefully encouraging other people. Because like I said, I really enjoyed the little unique twists for the bullet hell system and the tower defense that you had in Cable Rush and Cataclysm. And I hope for the best for you in the future. I hope that it's something that you're able to continue to improve on, and you'll just find success in what you're trying to do.
yeah, thank you very much. I definitely wouldn't be able to do these things without some of the really talented people that I've had the privilege to work with. Like, uh, you can pretty much find any of my teammates in the credits of the games. Like Alex or Thomas have all been huge help to getting me the experience and just being able to help like create these kind of games. So
Yeah, and like I'll say this as well. I hope for the best for not only you and for the people that you're collaborating with, because it sounds like you guys have a good team setup or dynamic setup, and hopefully that is something that you guys can continue to work with and continues to prove fruitful for you guys. If what I just said makes any sense in the nonsense.
yeah, no, definitely we've typically been working a lot together and recently started collaborating with another artist, Arkin Pixel. But yeah, we have been making quite a bit lately, so I definitely look forward to making more stuff with them.
Awesome, awesome. Like I said, I hope for the best. I'm gonna, I tried Cataclysm before we even were uh, in communication to talk. I stumbled across it from Twitter, and I enjoyed it, and I continue to enjoy. Like, hopefully, you continue to make games because I look forward to them because I'm sure I'll continue to enjoy them as well.
Good to hear. Thank you very much.
Now, Gamma, like I said, I don't want to keep you for too much longer. So if there was nothing else, I'll let you get back to your day.
Uh, Not that I can think of, but yeah, thank you for having me. It's been very fun.
Oh yeah, no, thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. It was a blast getting to talk to you, and the advice you shared, as well as some of the words of encouragement, and getting to learn a little more about Game Jam. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. And thanks again to our guest Gamma for making time to have this conversation with me. And thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Ron Jenkins for the use of his music from the title track from Roads Deep. And if you like this podcast and want to support it and help it grow, please subscribe or follow me on Twitter at Red Tunic Podcast to receive the latest episodes and news, and be sure to share if those you think might enjoy it, as well as follow along the links for Gamma to learn more about them. Thanks, and until next time.